All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Shiva has already started screen share, so we can get started. And Shiva, I'll keep an eye on chat as usual. So thank you.
Very good morning to everyone. Good to see you folks. So what I'll do is that I'm going to basically kind of cover a bunch of updates and then basically talk about what we're going to be doing over the next 4 weeks so that all of you are basically aware of what are the changes which are coming. Okay, so one is that basically there were some requests of basically if a scheduled patch fails, then basically you need a notification for it. So we've essentially kind of added that in the existing version. And then basically that essentially will also create a ticket. So you know that you have to manually mitigate it in case the patch job fails. So that piece has been added. The next one is that in case you want to, so there was a request by certain people. So if you remember that whenever a new asset is added, so for example, if it's a server or if it's a workstation, we were basically adding a set of default tags. There was a request that I don't want any of those default tags. I just want basically to tag everything manually. So disable all the tags. So we basically have given this ability to disable all the tags, which basically you can, if you disable it, then it does not attach the tags that we attach by in an automated fashion. So the other thing is that we've added another report which basically says all the other assets which are not Windows assets, etc. So those are assets basically which are there in the report. So this essentially is any network devices, all of that essentially, and phones, etc. appear in this asset so that you can essentially kind of take it out for triaging separately. That was a report that was asked for. And then we have new widgets which talk about the remediation by EPSS score in 15 days, 3 days, and 30 days, which was basically kind of requested by a few folks that this widget is also ready. And then you can essentially kind of, we also changed the installation script to create and run from the application's CyberCNS path so that you basically, in case you copy it to any other location, then it does not essentially create any temporary files over there, etc. So that was done. And kind of housekeeping, Untangle is now called Arista. So we essentially are calling Untangle as Arista on the screen. So I think somebody brought this up. One of the things is that we are basically disabling support for the Azure AD legacy integration because Microsoft has stopped support for it. So we basically, you have to essentially kind of configure. So this legacy mode will also be removed shortly from the UI. We just are basically keeping it over there so that you get time to basically migrate over. And this in V4 anyway, the Azure AD legacy will essentially go away. But for the legacy mode, basically now the support is gone. Now you have to basically go through the process of authenticating and doing all of those things by creating the application yourself. And that is basically the way that you will continue to integrate. So the reason for why the Azure AD integration legacy mode has been removed is because when you use the legacy mode, what was happening is that we were creating an application in our tenant, which was then trying to authenticate with your tenant. And that basically is not a very safe practice. And so we basically kind of stopped support for it. And Microsoft also has the recommendation that you should have an application in your tenant where you can define the permissions and you will be able to disable it at your convenience rather than essentially having a vendor's application in your tenant. Now, coming to the other piece where we are doing this. So with this, the other thing which I want to kind of talk about is that now that we basically have V4 in a certain shape, it's not probably at 100%, but it's basically there almost like 80% there. And I'll talk about all the feedback that we've been receiving, and I want to thank everyone who's been giving us feedback. But what we're going to be doing right now is that only critical bug fixes, which are basically SEV 1, 2, 3 bug fixes, which essentially are required on the current platform, will be taken up. All of the requirements which come in either as SEV 4 or enhancements, minor tweaks, etc., all of those essentially will be moved into V4, and we will be taking care of those in the V4 instance. So what we're going to do is that over the course of the next 90 days, as you basically have access to both the systems, we are not going to add more features into this system. In fact, this week will be kind of the last week, where I will talk about any enhancements that we're doing in the existing system. And all of the new features and everything will be moved over to the V4 system. And the reason for that is very simple, because right now, when we started V4, we started it with a very small team of 6 people. Honestly, to speak, it's basically 6 overworked people who basically are manning the entire V4 team. And we've later added on a few more folks, especially from a dashboarding, QA, and the reports perspective. But right now, what we need is we basically need the remainder of the team to stop working on the existing platform and come and help us with the new platform, so that we can get not only 100% parity, but also basically to essentially incorporate all of the feature requests that are there. So we've basically gone through the entire history of from the day that we launched. And thanks to a couple of folks on the team, which is Malti and Suraj and Siranjeevi, etc., we have been able to kind of come up with a list of 180 feature requests that essentially are supposed to be added into the product. And I'm happy to say that when we went through the feature requests, what we noticed was almost like 40% of the features already have been accommodated into V4. But there is still basically the 60% work that needs to be done to bring all of those feature requests that you folks have asked into the new platform. And so what we're going to be doing is that shifting the resources over from the existing platform and having them work on the new platform, so that we can essentially get these pieces to you faster. And basically kind of our goal is that basically when we start the new year, most of you should be comfortable with the new version and be happy with the new version and what it provides. And that's essentially the kind of the goal that we are working towards, so we can have a new year with new beginnings. So with that said, so I'm just going to quickly kind of go over this thing. So there were a whole bunch of queries plus requests that were raised. And so we've been kind of going through all of them and basically closing them. A few of them basically kind of were a little delayed, a couple of days delay, but basically we've kind of closed all of the items that were essentially raised on the group. So I'm just going to call out a few of the features that were basically pointed out to us and how we fixed them with evidence. So basically, Christopher Gagan, thank you so much. You basically talked about that when we go through sections, the smooth scroll is not there and it's not smoothly functioning. And that has basically been fixed over here. So you can see that the smooth scroll now works in all the places. Simon Hopkin had basically told us that the colors to indicate critical, high, medium, low vulnerabilities are inconsistent across screens. And this has been fixed across all of the screens. So they kind of demonstrating that in all of the screens, these numbers are, these colors are consistent. So please check for this. Ryan had raised an issue of basically in the problem group list, when you do a sort on this thing, it basically does not work. And now that also has been resolved. Chris had basically talked about when the problem groups list is the clickable option to view, you want a clickable option to view the details instead of just the count. And so that has also been provided. And then there was basically a thing about capitalizing all the problem group names, and that also has been resolved. That was from Brian. Thank you, guys. Christopher Gagon actually gave us a very valuable input, which says that item numbers always resets when I select 100 assets per page. So right now we basically have a small button, which is a save button. So if you basically want to kind of reorder the columns and basically change the page size, etc., and you click on that save table settings, it will essentially save those table settings, and it will basically, the next time you come there, it will essentially use those table settings. So this is something that has already been incorporated. There was a table alignment issue that basically Chris had reported. So that was also basically kind of done. So please have a look at it in different screens and let us know if it is resolved. At least from our QA set, this has basically been marked as resolved. Ryan and basically Chris basically said that when they clicked on certain sections, then those the asset page basically starts reflecting on top instead of just being limited to services. And that issue has been basically fixed now. So you can essentially see this being resolved. And then we also have basically the external scan. So you have the complete set of certificates that basically what are the certificate details that are coming in. So this was something that was missing in the last update. And now basically the external scan certificates have started coming. External scan, basically we put it out and then we kind of rolled it back in. But you should see these updates basically coming on 1st of December. We are basically rolling out the external scan. So you should be able to see all of these details from the first. The second is that all the cipher information, all of that is basically made visible over here. And then all the ports, all of that data is basically being visible. And this was something that was pointed out. One of the things that we are also doing is that under assets, we're going to be creating this menu called certificates. And these are two types of assets. One is for external scan assets and internal assets. And what we are doing with all the certificates is kind of giving you a UI where you can see all the certificates across the company. And you can essentially see whether the certificate has expired or the certificate is going to be expiring in the next 30 days. And all of the details, whether it's a secure certificate or it's a self-signed certificate or all of those details, right? And so you will also be able to configure notifications based on if a SSL cert is expiring within 30 days, then we can actually create a ticket on your end. So this entire certificates view will help you to get a uniform, like a view of the certificates across the organization. So in case of any renewals, etc., you can essentially work through this view rather than having to go to each asset and kind of looking at those assets. The next question is that, is it available for global view? Yes, it's available for global view, and it's also available in a company view. So both of the views are available, and this keeps in principle with, we want to make everything available for you in the global view as well as in the company specific view. The only place that we are deviating from this norm is with Active Directory, because unfortunately with Active Directory, trying to present a global view does not work because A, it is too much of data. B, it's not data that you can make sense basically at a global level. So that's the only reason for why the Active Directory data is being kept at that level. Next one, the user management. So one of the things was that if you remember when we launched beta, we basically said, yeah, you can go and create users in the user portal and inside of basically our white labeled version of Zetadel, but basically it was very cumbersome, and we experienced a lot of you experienced problems in terms of adding users, and it was not very clear. And then how do you restrict access to companies, etc. So we built out a complete user management screen so that you don't need to go back into that screen. And you can essentially kind of set up the users here. You can set up their emails, you can set up their MFA, you can set up everything over here. And you can provide access to limited companies, which is basically the include exclude. So that entire piece we've essentially brought in right here in this user management screens. And then also live is basically the whole plan and billing view. So you can essentially see what is your current plan, and you can essentially see what is the asset count, what is the cost that is accrued to you from each of the companies based on the asset count that they have. And so it shows you which tier you belong to and how the cost is broken across multiple companies. So this entire thing is also basically being made available to you in this release. There are certain set of items that we basically are going to be releasing over the course of the next few days, and I'm just going to call that out. Christopher Gagnon had said basically he had a problem with AD scan not being populated. And one of the reasons for that was because from the Active Directory, the domain information was basically not coming out correctly. And so we basically put a workaround for it. And so in future, this will not occur. And a fix for this is being rolled out as of 1st of December. That is basically in a couple of days. Dennis had actually brought out a number of items, which basically one was this external scan. As I said, we rolled it out and then we rolled it back in, and we expect it to essentially be rolled back again on 5th of December with the complete feature set that I talked about. Scheduler also will be rolled out in 5th December, but in this particular case, there are two aspects that I want everyone to understand. The scheduler over here is going to be limited only to scheduling your probe scans. So you can basically choose different types of scans and scheduling it. If you look at the dashboards and the reports, they have their own scheduler. So you can go to the dashboards and reports and schedule them over there. And last but not the least, in terms of lightweight agents, the lightweight agents in B4 are no longer schedule bound. They essentially run continuously and they are real-time agents. So they are no longer scheduled agents. Okay. The last question that Dennis had asked was basically, we have this new concept of a web installer that you can basically kind of send a link over to any of your customers and ask them to install it and then get a full profile of that particular PC or computer. This basically was asked by basically Pramon from TeamLogic IT, and then we developed it in V3. Is it going to be there in V4? The answer is yes, it will be in V4, and it is basically expected to be launched on 5th of December. So this is essentially the update that we have. So we've been working on the new version, kind of getting it improved and getting it better. There is basically a serious Chrome vulnerability that has been announced yesterday. And basically, while NVIDIA has not processed it, we have already processed it and basically added it to the database. So in case you see it in today's scans, please basically force a Chrome update because it seems to be actively exploited. So that's basically kind of the update for today. If there are any questions, then we can take those questions.
All right, so Shiva, a couple of quick questions, Shiva. I'm not sure if you kept an eye on the chat, but Sean has a question. When will the when will you get a project timeline for the new platform in terms of delivery for everyone?
So the concept is that we are just waiting for these couple of features, as Dennis had pointed out, which we were missing. So as soon as these two features are basically added on 5th of December, we will be enabled. So actually the rollout for the migrate button is there. But since we didn't have these features, we didn't want people to migrate and then lose out on any of the features. So we essentially have kept it hidden. As soon as these two updates are rolled out, then you can essentially do a migration. But you will have a period of 90 days in which you can essentially kind of migrate over your companies and then basically see it in the V4 version. And that's what we are. And then where can we get a project timeline? I will essentially, on the website, we will post a project timeline, a real-time project timeline. And basically, we'll keep that updated for everyone to see. I will send the link on, I will send out the link in a communication that we will send out to the entire group.
Okay. The next question, we already answered Craig's question that will we be a pen test? Craig, we are a vulnerability and compliance management solution. So yeah, pen test will be right now outside of our scope. And I think I saw a couple of other answers also saying that that's probably best done by an external third party because it's not just a tool. It's it's almost like a certification that somebody tested your network and this is what they found. Couple of other questions. Will the old CyberCNS dashboard be disabled in future from Mac?
So the old CyberCNS dashboards are all migrated to the new dashboard that we have. If there is anything specific that you need from the old dashboard, we can basically look at what needs to be done on a case-by-case basis. But ideally, yes, we would be shutting that down because we'll be maintaining one platform. If there is anything that is missing or you need us to do to help you to migrate to the new dashboard, please let us know. If absolutely there's a requirement that that old dashboard has to be kept alive, then there are ways and means by which we can keep it alive.
Okay, moving on. Mark has a question. Will there be a rollback option if things go wrong?
So yes, in fact, this is something that we've been working on. So when you migrate to the new version, the agent basically hones into the new system. Now, in case there is a problem or whatever it is, you can essentially click a button on the old one which says revert, and then the agent will essentially kind of go back to the old system basically after that. So then you will essentially see the updates going back to the old system.
Okay, a couple of other questions. John has a question that after remediation, can we rescan in real time to see if what was updated or repaired shows up in the new scan?
It will be automatically taken care of. In case you're using a lightweight agent, it is automatic because as soon as you install or uninstall software, it immediately sends it over to this thing. So you don't even need to run a scan. In case you're using a probe, yes, you have to run a scan, and at that point of time, it will figure it out.
Okay. Next question is from Steve, saying that he has early access. Will that carry forward when the complete V4 version is launched? All the settings and everything that he did in the current early access version.
Yeah, if you basically want us to carry it over, we'll carry it over. If you don't want us to carry it over, we won't carry it over. So that's basically an option that we'll provide you. So when we create your tenant, we'll essentially show you that you have these 2 tenants. And if you want us to carry over anything from the existing beta tenant, we will carry it over. However, the current beta tenant will be left as it is, as I said, because going forward, as we introduce new features, we will be first putting it into that beta instance, and then you can kind of explore it, and then you can basically push it forward.
Hey, Eric has a question on patching. Eric, yeah, even our current product supports third-party application patching. So we will send you a link to the documentation on that. And if you have any issues with that, just send us a mail to support@cybercns.com, and we will help you out for sure. Yeah, that is what Peter's already sent that. Thanks, Peter. Okay.
And actually in V4, we have not enabled the patching feature on live. We are basically going to be enabling it because there's a new patch engine that we are putting in. And the changes to the patch engine are basically primarily, we have Mac, Linux, and Windows patching. And with Windows, we also have OS patching embedded into it. So that's basically the difference.
Okay, will there be a separate reporting module, or will the reporting be done through the dashboard module in the V4?
In V4, the reports are a separate module, and basically it is, again, you can basically create your own reports, and we are basically publishing our own reports. The reports module, basically, since we had a couple of issues with it in terms of like what data, how to prevent others from seeing reports that you are not supposed to, because if you look at, if I'm a vulnerability viewer there and I'm not a compliance viewer, I should not be able to see compliance reports. So in order to do that role-based access control, we basically have been waiting for that to be released. But very shortly, we'll be releasing the reports module separately. So just as you see dashboards, you'll see reports. When you go to reports, you can see all the reports out there.
Okay, John has an issue with rescan that it doesn't seem to work currently. So I'm going to request you to send that to support, and we'll take care of that for you, John. Mac, is a new patch engine moving away from Chocolatey?
So Chocolatey is going to be only one of the sources of data, but the new patch engine will not be installing Chocolatey. It will be our own patch engine. Yes, that is true.
And then Steve has another question that, yeah, thanks, Steve, for the appreciation. I think, yeah, when the final V4 to go live, what's the date for that, Shiva?
I can give that date in the next week's call. I just want to make sure that when we give a date, it is basically an exact date. So just give me time till next week to basically make sure that some of the critical updates have gone live. Once those go live, then we can basically give a final date.
Chris saying that the migration button is hidden. Can we access it in some way?
We can enable it for your tenant, Chris, if you want it. Just send us a mail, we'll get it enabled.
Okay, so right now we're caught up on chat. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, I have a question for the team, really.
Yes, sir.
What are the repeating themes that we're getting with a number of our clients? And I'm sure you're probably fed up with hearing this, is the constant comparison of the platform versus the likes of Nessus and Qualys and things like that. And we have 2 or 3 clients who use the platform daily. They're in it all the time. They're quite technical. That one organization I'm dealing with is a bunch of developers themselves. So on a fairly regular basis, they're raising sort of inconsistencies with scans and sort of remediation plans and things like that, and doing direct comparisons with Nessus. So, for example, where Connect Secure has done a scan of an agent, they'll do a similar scan with Nessus, and Nessus will identify things that Connect Secure can't see or isn't picking up. Now, to be fair, at the point which we raise tickets with Connect Secure, the support's amazing. So brilliant. You parachute onto it very quickly, you dive into it, and 9 times out of 10, there's always a fix. There's always a tweak in the back end or something gets added. And whilst that's great, I think one of the sort of bits of feedback I've had is that whilst that support's amazing in terms of how quick and reactive it is the fact that we're having to do that. We're having to almost get some of these things turned on or switched on. So, I mean, I don't have a fundamental understanding of sort of how vulnerabilities get picked up in the back end, where there's like a database of things being turned on or switched on. But so at the moment, I'm dealing with a client who's got an opportunity for about 20,000 licenses, for instance, or device licenses. The feedback today is he's had a trial of the platform, loves it. However, he's just lost the will to live with sort of the inconsistencies with it. So I don't know if I'm alone in this or whether this is whether it's unique to our platform. We are sort of a self-hosted one on-prem, so whether it's an issue with ourselves. But it's something which just is a constant niggle for us, which just never seems to go away. And I know for a fact if I raise it with you guys, you'll get your best and brightest on it and sorting it out. But then, a few weeks later, I'll have that sort of same experience again. So I'm not sure where to turn or what to do, and I don't know whether I'm alone in that experience. And it might be that it is our platform, and I need to rebuild it or reprovision it. So I was just looking for some thoughts on sort of how we could proceed or what we can do. We've definitely got some documented, tangible sort of examples of that.
Understood. So, Simon, I can answer this question in 2 ways. Like we've basically had, I think you report a few of them and we have had others report. So there are 3 classes of things that we essentially see. One is essentially for some reason or the other, our scan has basically missed picking up a particular piece of software. And I can explain to you how this happens so that we can essentially kind of see this, right? So the way that this happens is that we essentially are pulling from multiple sources. So you have things like NVD, you have the JSOC, and basically there are 3 or 4 sources. We're pulling all the data back in, and this basically data is getting refreshed every day. Now, inside that, basically there is essentially what is called a common enumeration, which basically is there for every application. So for example, if there's Microsoft Teams, it basically has an identifier which says Microsoft Teams, and then it basically puts it in there. So what happens is that we essentially take this, we essentially match it out of saying that, okay, this is Microsoft Teams, and this is the version of Microsoft Teams. And in that definition, there is a definition which says that this particular vulnerability is applicable to this particular software, this particular version, and this is what it basically is supposed to work on. Now, what happens is that in the case of if everything works fine, then this match through will go through and it will come back and it will give you the vulnerability. Now, what suddenly happens is that, say, Microsoft Teams, for example, a month back, basically they created 2 versions. One was called Microsoft Teams Classic, and the other one was called Microsoft Teams. So what happened is that the CPEs that were reported on NVD basically became 2. One said Classic and one said this thing. And then when the matcher went into matching it, it basically found Classic. It said, okay, this is Microsoft Teams Classic, and started reporting vulnerabilities only on Microsoft Teams Classic. What they failed to report at that point of time, it was not there anywhere, was that Microsoft Teams, which was there, also had vulnerabilities from Microsoft Teams Classic. So it was basically a miss that what happened. And so we had to essentially manually patch these things over there. So that is basically a place where we essentially miss out on certain vulnerabilities. Second is, there is basically a whole bunch of vulnerabilities that basically get pushed out by a lot of vendors into the NVD, which essentially says every version of the software is basically vulnerable. And in those cases, what happens is that when you see the report from Nessus, etc., it kind of shows you that everything is vulnerable. But what we then do is we essentially take it out and then we kind of go through the vendor's website to essentially say what is the exact version that's vulnerable, what is the exact version that's not vulnerable. On some days, what happens is that we have a backlog of almost like 200 to 250 vulnerabilities that land up on a particular day. And on those days, it takes us at least, see, our team today, the way we are equipped right now, can handle up to 30 to 35 vulnerabilities per day. They can essentially kind of triage and put that back into the database to make sure that it's okay. But when we get a load of 250 to 260 on a particular day, that's when essentially we run into a backlog. So this is something that we're working on to make sure that this backlog is removed so that we basically kind of get these vulnerabilities kind of tracked on a daily basis. We are also looking at certain automation process that we can put where we can actually basically kind of scrape the vendors' websites to pull the data. And out of the 1,600 odd applications that we are basically tracking, right now we finished automating it for 200 applications. We have to automate it for the remaining 1,400 applications for us to be effective. But that is a process that we're going through. And we expect that in the next quarter, that is basically in the first quarter of next year, we would basically have completed all the 1,600 applications. And after that, we can be on complete parity with any of the other competitors. Now, just to put it in perspective, please also understand that Nessus and Qualys, etc., have been in existence for a legacy of 20 years. So they have had time to build all these databases and keep them up to date. We are building them and we have built them over the last 18 months, but we will get there in the next 3 months. You will essentially see complete parity with those. If you, I think we can talk to Dennis and others. A year back, we were basically actually lagging by almost, I would say, by like 30 to 35%. But now the distance has become much lesser. And the only area where we are now lacking is basically in external scans. And that is also getting bridged with this V4 release.
I think that additional context is really useful, Shiva, just to try and understand the process. So I'm really grateful for that. And, you know, I am conscious that, you know, if you look at Nessus, they'll have a cast of 1,000 in terms of sort of back-end engineers and staff and, you know, massive budgets and all the rest of it. And having been a Tenable user for best part of 10 years, I could probably count on one hand how many false positives there are. And so where the challenge lies with me at the moment is I'm trying to convince a number of my customers, existing customers, and going after prospects, which to say, look, this is a much better platform. You want to come across. So I think the way in which you describe almost there's like a manual effort in the background where your engineers are going through a queue of things and you're ingesting a lot of vulnerabilities, but you're also QAing a lot of that. And I get the fact that, you know, that QA sort of process does allow you to validate, or in theory you should have, you know, better accuracy. Yeah, as in you're not just saying it is vulnerable, you're actually going and testing it. But I think at the same time, it's probably hurting you at the same time in terms of that backlog in queue. Certainly that's my experience of it. And you know, if it's going to get better in the next Q1, Q2, fantastic. It's just it's for us at ITPS. It's the overriding sort of constant feedback we're getting, and for the vast majority of our clients who are non-technical, who just wouldn't dig into any of this, just accept it for what it is. That's okay. But we have a bunch of clients who have large in-house high teams, very technical. Some develop, you know, they can really sort of dig into this and. For us who get the feedback at ITPS and when I log in support tickets, well, why is that different to that? And it becomes quite a soul destroying process for us. So it's just trying to, you know, if it's going to get better, fantastic. But I just wanted to put it out there. It's, you know, the development of Connect Secure, you know, you're doing some great integrations and stuff like that. But at the core of the product is the CVM. You know, that's for me, that's the first and foremost, is just getting that on parity with everything else. Now, I appreciate different partners will have different views and different priorities, but you know, if there had to be one thing to focus on after the new UI, sort of, is just getting that, because once that's boxed off, I think you'll be flying at that point. So it was just some feedback. I just wanted to provide that. So I'll shut up and let somebody else talk.
So Simon, I'm very thankful for that feedback. And in fact, see, it's feedback like this that helps us basically kind of stay on course. And to your answer, it is not that after the new UI, we are going to be working on this. This is a parallel team that is working on this. And Srikanth and I basically actually discussed this basically actually last week, where we essentially said that we're going to essentially further increase the staff on basically the ones who are doing the manual remediations by almost doubling it. And that's the investment that we want to make, because it's not, and we understand that this problem is real and current. And the problem is also being compounded by the fact that I think there are a lot of people who are just, for whatever reason, the number of vulnerabilities are just basically growing leaps and bounds. And on a daily basis, we're seeing a lot of vulnerabilities being thrown into the system, but with very inaccurate information in terms of, like, there is no methodology to it. There is basically kind of, I think the whole concept of bug bounty hunters, they're just throwing in a whole bunch of items. And then after that, basically, nobody has responsibility for this. So if you look at NVD, what is happening is that a lot of the vulnerabilities that any other people are kind of showing up are basically, NVD is going and basically rejecting those vulnerabilities, saying that these are duplicates, or this is not a vulnerability and we cannot confirm these vulnerabilities. So the point is that one is, and this is a debate that I've had with multiple people on different this thing, right? One is I can throw a lot of information at you where you can see a whole bunch of vulnerabilities and we say, oh, we have all these vulnerabilities. But when we turn around and say, okay, how do I fix this vulnerability, right? Now, the problem is that when somebody says every version is vulnerable, now, how do we essentially fix this? We don't have a fix for this. The truth is that the vendor probably says that I've rejected this vulnerability, so I don't even care about it. So we are not even fixing it. So in this particular case, there is really not much that can be done. But Simon, in your case, what I would like to get from you, I will basically dig down with my team on what are the things that they actually fix. Because I remember one case where I worked with you, where we basically kind of elucidated, like most of it was false positives. There's only one with .NET. And again, that was because there were multiple versions of .NET running on the system, and we actually gave you those explanations. So let me go back and see this latest technical issue that you have, and let me basically kind of see, because our databases don't get updated unless basically these vulnerabilities come in and they are basically confirmed. So in case these are unconfirmed vulnerabilities, I will essentially see whether we can roll out a patch where we say that we'll put out the vulnerabilities, we'll say that this is not confirmed, but it is expected to be on your system. We do not know whether there is a fix for this, so that at least you can see the vulnerabilities. And later when we confirm it, it will change to confirm. So I can roll out that feature fairly quickly.
I think that's that would be a great feature, Shiva, and I think Nessus works very much like that, where it relies on just the patch release version being reported to suggest that it's vulnerable. And naturally, when you get some of the remediation notes in Tenable or in the scan results, there's even text there that will say this is unverified. We're relying on the reported version of the product. So having that same capability, I think would address a lot of the issues. But so what I'll do, just because I'm conscious I don't want to take over sort of the session, is I'll get my team to sort of draft up a list of sort of issues that we're working with at the moment, and we'll log a fresh ticket and we'll just try and work through it if we can.
Yeah, please basically send it to me. I will basically get onto this and I will get you I will give you an answer which says, was it A, something that we didn't detect? B, was it a false positive? C, is it something that is not confirmed? I will put that in that categories, and then we'll make the release with the not confirmed vulnerabilities basically as a priority, and basically get it done probably this weekend.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, Shiva.
Yeah, so Shiva, I think a few more, on the same lines of what Simon said. There have been, Craig had a point that his auditors are using Nessus or Qualys, and Scott also said there are some issues with inconsistencies. Likewise with Adam. But yeah, I think hopefully Shiva's answer would have, hopefully, resolved those particular questions. I think, yeah, John, to your point, there is, the migration to V4 will be automatic, and we have a migration wizard which will take care of that. And I think Adam has one question which say, I see so many .NET CV 10 and I have to suppress them. Why is there so many updates for .NET 3 through 7 showing if they have a roll-up update?
If they have the roll-up update, then they will not show. It's either that the .NET, after installing .NET, you have not rebooted the machine, in which case basically they have not taken effect. Unless basically that is the case, it will essentially not show any CV vulnerabilities for the .NET versions. The reason why it is showing .NET vulnerabilities is because there is explicit this thing. Because again, remember .NET, we don't pick up from the NVD, we are picking up from the Microsoft MSRC. So if the update is basically not completed because either it is a pending reboot or any of those pieces, only then you will essentially see this. So Adam, if you have a question on this, please send this across to me. I will have it investigated. And I agree with Pranay. In a lot of cases, basically, what has happened is .NET versions are end of life, and basically they are lying around in the system. And so that basically is supposed to be reported as a vulnerability. Folks, please remember that this .NET vulnerabilities of EOL, etc., we were not reporting earlier because we didn't believe it was a vulnerability because there's no vulnerability that was defined. But when we spoke to, so Simon, I think you remember when we were basically dealing with the last issue, the same thing happened because we didn't report those .NET versions as basically being vulnerable because it was not a vulnerability, but it was just end of life. So now we have started reporting that end of life, and that is why a lot of people are seeing this end of life notifications.
Shiva, we're trying to get confirmation here on whether the beta and the current version are able to run side by side. Can you comment on that?
The same agent does not basically run on both places. The thing is that you can either go to V3 or V4, or you can stay on V3. That's how it is. So we've not done the side-by-side thing because basically it would be way too much of bandwidth for communicating with both of the forces. But we can essentially kind of, but that's something that we are not doing. But you can switch back and forth between the two of them. That is the support that we're going to be providing.
Okay, thank you.
John has a question that I'm showing programs as needed to be removed, updated, that are not installed. So how deep are these scans? Is it looking at folders left behind, registry keys not being removed?
Yes, it's looking at your installed applications from a registry perspective. Then it looks like at any executable names which are basically lying around. So all of those basically, it scans the file system table. It basically scans the registry and basically sees any of these things which are left around.
Yeah, Mark on the same lines that he has seen similar things for Chrome plugin.
Yeah, because what happens is that you basically download, for example, the CRX file, right? And then the CRX file basically is lying around. Although you uninstalled it from Chrome, it's basically lying in some directory. So that is technically basically supposed to be reported as a vulnerability. So I think we have covered all the questions, right, Sri?
Mac has a question. The patch engine moving away from Chocolatey. I think you addressed it, but maybe you just want to say that. And Ryan was saying we missed this. Was this confirmed?
Yes, it's basically we are moving away from Chocolatey and we're basically building our own internal engine. Yes.
All right, so no other questions that I can see. So yeah, sure. I just want to wrap up and
As usual, thank you, everyone, and especially Simon. Thank you for bringing that up. Send the data across to me. We will basically address it line by line, and we will go through it. And we will basically we are here to basically make sure that this product does everything that you need it to be. Thank you very much.